Elaine shoved the eviction notice into my hand right after the will reading. 7 figures, Tom. You're out tonight. I saw owner hail Veterans Endowment, then touched the thin envelope I'd just received, stamped Compliance Custodian. I stood in the county lot, the Ohio River wind cutting through my old coat. Red leaves spun at my heels. Somewhere, a plastic thermos of coffee went cold, bitter in the air. Elaine folded the paper and pushed it deeper into my palm, like packing ice. "This will be quick," she said, jerking her chin toward Maple Street, where our yellow brick duplex sat in a line of bare maples. "Be reasonable." I looked at the bold line. Owner hail Veterans Endowment. Under it, a court date for a summary eviction hearing, a clerk's signature, a pale blue seal. I didn't plead. I didn't argue. I breathed in and out, slow. A wire tightened along my bad lower back. In my coat pocket, the thin envelope rustled. Compliance Custodian, Temporary Authority. A tiny switch flipped somewhere in my head. Not a cheer, more like the click of a light in a long, dark room. "You hear me?" Elaine asked, 15 years younger than me, lipstick still red against the cold. "Dad left 7 figures. You don't get to cling anymore." "Yeah," I said. I know how that sounds. Quiet, dry, like weakness. I didn't tell her the 7 figures weren't sloshing around as cash, that they were already moored to the Veterans Clinic, and that my so-called pocket change came with a very quiet ring of keys. That morning had started with a plain funeral, red brick church by the river, bell sound like a spoon on china. Pastor Miller read the old lines about faithfulness and work. A photo of Colonel Richard Rick Hale on the easel, young in uniform, eyes set, firm jaw. A row of old vets sat hunched in their coats. I caught the faint oil smell off a man's jacket, the smell of shop floors and afternoons when Rick and I changed oil for guys who came home trembling. After the benediction, I stood a minute longer. My left knee had gone numb. Pain crept up my back to my shoulder. Rick wasn't a talker, but he could look you quiet. He'd half smile and say, "Now, Tom, money's like motor oil. Put it in the right place, and the engine runs smooth." I asked, "And if you don't?" He said, "Then it slips through everything, and all you keep is a dirty hand." The will reading was in a small meeting room by the town library. Cream walls, windows to the river. Caleb Dorsey, salt and pepper hair, glasses, raspy voice. Read slow, line by line. Most of Rick's assets, cash, stock, and real estate, moved into the Hale Veterans Endowment, a permanent fund for the town's Veterans Clinic. Restricted funds, Caleb said and explained. Principal stays, earnings pay out. Purpose is binding. This is not money to divvy up. I glanced at Elaine. Her smile looked like she heard water and thought it was liquid gold. Caleb went on. Several properties, including the Maple Street duplex, were placed in the quirkily named housing portfolio to serve the fund's mission: staff housing, patient family lodging, operations support. Elaine shifted. Her red nails froze on the chair arm. "And my personal share?" she asked, flat and sharp. Caleb pushed up his glasses. Miss Hale would receive a monthly personal stipend, conditional on 20 hours a week in community service at the clinic or related fund work, per the bylaws your father signed. Start date follows completion of paperwork. He paused. There's also an interim governance note for the transition period. A thin envelope appeared in my hand. Caleb murmured, "Mr. Hale delegated compliance oversight for the first 24 months to someone he trusted to be slow and steady." I opened it. Inside, a plastic card and a few dry lines. Compliance custodian. Temporary. Access to regular audit reports. Stewardship of the maintenance camera system at fund properties. And authority to initiate/approve appeals on evictions that harm the fund's mission or violate policy. The stipend attached was small enough to be embarrassing. Pocket change. But I've spent a life in a shop. I know how one small bolt holds a whole axle. Elaine didn't look at my envelope. She stared at Caleb. "My father left 7 figures," she repeated like chewing a phrase. "He left it to a purpose," Caleb said. "An endowment is restricted, not a free spend account." He softened. Mr. Hale believed meaning is what outlasts. The room felt narrower. The river tapped at the stones outside. I said nothing. The plastic card cooled in my hand. Maple Street in fall looks like someone pulled a yellow knit shawl over it. Soft light, dust caught in it. Our duplex was yellow brick, gray roof, dark green door, 2 mirror halves. We lived on the left. The right-hand side rotated. Families of out-of-town patients for a week or 2, sometimes a new nurse. I had repainted our little kitchen this summer, installed a maple shelf myself, eased the edge, sanded it smooth like a worn shifter knob. Ray and Marcia, the older couple down the block, shuffled by most evenings with a warm pie tin. Ray would tease, "Tom, when are you back at the shop?" My door lever's sticking. I'd laugh and say my back wouldn't have it, though my hand still remembered. "Elaine?" Marcia asked softly. "Is she all right?" I shrugged. "She's grieving," I said. "Grief runs faster when folks think there's money." Marcia sighed. "Rick was good," she said. "We saw him pay for meds quiet-like more than once." That night I set the plastic card on the kitchen table and read the interim policy line by line. A gatekeeper's job. View audits, toggle/maintain common area cameras. Raise a red flag if someone pushes a decision off mission, like turning a fund property into a short-term cash machine. I poured more tea and smelled the wet cardboard of the box. Through the wall, the fridge hummed like a sleeping cat. The morning after the reading ended with that scene in the county lot, Elaine's eviction notice. I'm used to the gait of pain, slow, as if I'm dragging a shadow. I didn't argue, just looked at the owner line. When she turned, her heel crushed a dry leaf with a crack like a period. I tucked the paper away, drove slow past the red brick coffee shop. People pressed close to the heater. I thought of Rick. Money's oil. That afternoon, I sat with Caleb in his upstairs office in the old post building. He laid out a sheet and a pencil, drew a circle, wrote principal, then an arrow to earnings. "That's an endowment," he said. "Restricted means purpose-bound. Any payout has to serve the clinic. More rehab beds, machine repair, meds, nurse training." He tapped another heading. Housing portfolio. That duplex. Staff, family lodging, lodging. Not for sale. And the eviction. I asked. On what grounds? Caleb asked back. If the reason is simply Ms. Hale wants to recover the asset to use as she pleases, the court will ask, does that serve the mission? He eyed my card. You have appeal authority. You'll likely need it soon. That night, while I was buttoning a wool sweater, the phone rang. I've got measurements scheduled tomorrow, Elaine said. Find somewhere else. I hung up, sat, laid my hand on the card. A draft pushed through the door seam, leaf damp and cold. Next morning, I activated the maintenance cameras on the duplex, little lenses overlooking the shared hall and back entry. Not for snooping, maintenance and safety. Standard for fund property. A frame popped. A man in a black coat with a laser measurer and an overstuffed folio. Ken Boyd, the real estate agent who's always in the town group with staged home shots. Ken lingered at the back door, pulled a stack of glossy slips. One fell, face up in frame. Short-term luxury stay. Maple District. I set down my mug. My palm went damp. By noon, the prior month's audit blinked onto my old computer. Ray calls it antique. In the interim period, while Rick was hospitalized, there was a $15,000 line for asset optimization consulting. Initialed, Elaine Hale. I blinked longer than usual. Not because the number was huge, Rick dealt in bigger ones, but because right in the middle of a ventilator month, somebody was plotting optimization. I printed pages, clipped them. In the afternoon, I went to the Veterans Clinic. Low roof, beige walls, posters about PTSD therapy. Dr. Ava Moreno, dark eyes, hair in a tight bun, voice even and firm, welcomed me in. I laid the stack down. She read almost an hour without a sound, tapping the pen on the table edge when I added more. Ken Boyd, she said finally. He's been very friendly with the Home Builders Association lately. I like friendly. I don't like friendly that shows up on cue. She looked up. Tom, do you understand what you're holding? I'm holding a bolt, I said. Turn it right, the engine runs. Turn it wrong, the threads strip. You're holding a valve, she corrected, hiding a smile. Where the flow goes, that's the valve. The next day, Elaine brought a crew to measure the back patio, with sketches for string lights and a fire pit. I could see the plan. Ken recast half the duplex as a private retreat, and the other half, an old man with a bad back, pushed to the curb. I slipped a hand in my pocket, found the cold card. I could feel the chill rise through my palm. That night, I printed the internal audit again. The $15,000 optimization shone like oil on water. Caleb, via subpoena, had pulled an email from a vendor, Ken, to a H address. Once the evict's done, we'll schedule photos. Holiday ROI will be gorgeous. No Elaine in that note, just an initial. But the HK, plus that half signature on camera. I didn't want to push it into something ugly. I left Dr. Ava a note. Please don't humiliate his daughter. Teacher. A closed-door meeting with Caleb, Dr. Ava, and Pastor Miller happened on a rainy morning. The pastor set down a thermos of tar black coffee with a thunk. The church will witness if needed, he said. We saw Rick cover hospital bills. Dr. Ava pointed at the property list. This duplex isn't a pie to slice. It's a storeroom for invisible things, respite for caretakers, a bed for a night nurse, a breath for someone who just heard bad news. Caleb bundled the exhibits into 3 neat sets: bylaws and mission, maintenance cameras and entry logs, audit and the consulting spend. He asked if I wanted to warn Elaine before filing. I shook my head. I already asked Dr. Ava to go light where she can, I said. The only things that'll explain it to Elaine now are policy and work. Rumors spread. On the town Facebook page, Elaine posted, "An old moocher is squatting in my father's house. I'm just trying to restructure waste," and half the comments were heart emojis from her friends. The other half, mostly gray-haired, wrote, "Let Rick's money go where he meant." Ray and Marcia don't post. They left another apple pie on my stoop with a note. "Tom, don't read comments. Read the wind." I smiled a tired smile. The fall wind has only leaf speak in it. The main hearing came on a gray day. Small courtroom, an old judge's portrait hanging a little crooked. Judge Keating tapped the gavel. Case of Elaine Hale versus Tom Bennett, regarding eviction from property owned by the Hale Veterans Endowment. Elaine wore a cream suit and a skinny scarf, lipstick red. Ken sat a row back like a stranger. Caleb opened the first binder. Bylaws. He read slow, like naming engine parts. Principal preserved, earnings spent. All spending must serve the clinic's mission. Housing designated for staff, patient families, and operations lodging. No repurpose for personal gain. The judge nodded and marked lines with his pen. Second binder, maintenance camera logs. Caleb explained, "This isn't clandestine audio. These are common entries in halls the fund must monitor for maintenance and safety." The screen flickered. Ken with plans, the cover sheet, short-term rental agreement held in frame. Another clip, Elaine's half-signature at the kitchen corner, enough to show a purpose. Convert the duplex into a short-term luxury stay. The judge asked, "Does this purpose serve the clinic?" Elaine pressed her lips. "It would increase cash flow," she said. Caleb flipped the bylaws. "And that cash would flow where?" Third binder, audit and the consulting invoice. Dr. Ava stood, steady, not angry, not shaking. "The month Mr. Hale was dying, the fund paid $15,000 for asset optimization with Ms. Hale's initials. I'm not calling that illegal. I'm saying at that moment, what we needed was meds and care for a stage 3 cancer vet, not glossy luxury stay flyers." She took a breath. "Every month, this endowment's earnings pay for 3 rehab beds, 17 prescriptions, 2 nurse trainings. If we turn housing into a hotel, who sleeps where?" Elaine looked down. For a blink, her eyes rippled like a breeze over a shallow pan. Ken angled his face toward a wall print. Caleb had one more envelope. He looked at me. I nodded. He broke the seal. A letter from Colonel Rick, to be opened only if the fund's mission is challenged. His handwriting was careful, like a weld along a frame rail. "Dear Caleb, if you're reading this, someone's trying to shove the fund off its tracks. Money isn't good or bad on its own. I chose Tom Bennett as custodian for 24 months because he's slow and sure. He doesn't race. He tightens bolts. If my daughter Elaine loses her way, please don't break her. Let the community teach her. By work, by night shifts, by hearing the hurt. My child deserves to learn what money means." The room went silent like a plug pulled. I stared at my shoes. Dried mud flaked off the toe. I pictured Rick's beige cap, white at the temples, big hands. Judge Keating leaned back, fingers laced. "The court finds this is a restricted endowment. Mission is plain. Evidence shows an intended repurpose not serving the clinic. On eviction, denied." He paused. "As for the optimization spend and attempted misuse, refer to the fund's independent audit and the real estate board. As to Ms. Hale, Balancing education with accountability, the court adopts the fund's proposal. Restitution of the questionable spend. 200 hours of community labor at the clinic. Logistics, laundry, transport. A non-profit governance course at the community college, and no access to housing assets without approval. Soft claps in one row, a hiss in another. Ken dirtled into his collar. Elaine met my eyes. For the first time in months, her gaze wasn't sharp. It lay flat and heavy, like the river right before rain. Court adjourned. On the steps, mist salted my shoulders. Pastor Miller patted my back. Punishment can scare people. Work can make them understand. I nodded. My spine twanged like an old string. Caleb snapped his case shut. You keep that valve a bit longer. Once the flow's steady, we'll widen the pipe. I smiled. Got his drift. Long-term transparency. The next week, new protocol sheets went up in the clinic hall. Camera maintenance schedule, audit cadence, a hotline to report off-mission use of assets. Dr. Ava and I made a transparency board for the library. Big-ticket spends, repairs, contractor names. Folks could read it like a diner menu. If anyone wants to argue, she said, I'll brew coffee. Our duplex got a stamped label. Patient family lodging on the right-hand side. The left, my side, stayed home. I repainted the stoop and swapped a squeaky hinge. Each hammer tap was a slow heartbeat. One weekend, Ray and Marcia came by. Marcia set down a pie. Ken's offering discounts down at his office, she said. Looks like the board called him. Ray cleared his throat. And Elaine? Elaine showed up at the clinic at 7 a.m. in a gray tee and canvas sneakers. No scarf, no red lip. She asked where the laundry went, how to sweep without kicking dust into recovery rooms. Dr. Ava handed her a list. 7 to 11, laundry and returns. 11 to 1, help in the kitchen. 1 to 3, assist in PT. Elaine nodded, no back talk. Her hands fumbled. She spilled a bit of powder on the floor. Laughter popped in the laundry bay. Not mean, just the kind that escapes when someone is finally acting normal. I ran into her in the clinic kitchen. The coffee was cheap and harsh. Chicken soup from a can. Menthol rub in the air. Elaine didn't look at me. She poured hot water. I don't get it, she said softly. Why did Dad trust you more than me? I touched the cool edge of the steel counter. He trusted the work, I said. He trusted whoever could do it. And I couldn't. She looked up. In her eyes I saw a small, bright shard. Shame. Today you start, I said. Like everyone else. I handed her a new pair of thick rubber gloves, hard to pull on at first. They keep your hands from burning when you pull a hot tray. She looked at the gloves, then at me. Do you hate me? I added coffee, winced at the bitterness. Some days I did. Some days I didn't. But this fund, it needs both of us in the right place. I set the gloves down. One of us tightens bolts. The other learns not to pour oil on the stove. The town split. At the grocery, a woman said the court went easy, that a night in jail teaches faster. In the clinic, an old man said, counted as saving one. Pastor Miller held a short talk. Money isn't moral. It just amplifies what's already there. I stood in the hall, hands in my pockets, looking at the old vet photos. A young man in a steel pot helmet grinned under leaves. A gray-haired woman with medals stared straight into the lens. They did things I never had to do. All I had to do was keep a valve turned the right way. One evening, a young vet stopped at the duplex steps with a clamshell dinner. "You, Mr. He asked. "I'm Nate. From Chillicothe, my little girl staying on the right side while her mom's in surgery." He raised the clamshell. "Thank you for the house. I don't know how to say it. I'm not good at thanks." I looked at my shoe where a dark yellow maple leaf stuck to the toe. "Eat while it's warm," I said. "Cold food's harder to swallow." He smiled and went inside. I listened to the snap of a bug zapper in the nurse's room. My shadow stretched and shrank. Rain coming. 2 months passed. The independent audit confirmed the optimization spend had to be repaid. Ken got a formal reprimand and lost access to a few public asset projects. Lane finished her 200 hours early. Not to get it over with, but because she started showing up on time and doing the work. One afternoon I saw her in PT, helping an older woman lift a leg with a resistance band. She counted. 1, 2, 3. Voice steady. When they finished, the woman squeezed her hand and said, "Thank you, honey." That evening, Lane knocked on my door. She stood on the stoop with a clinic coffee. "It's not good," she said, smiling sadly, "but I wanted to bring you one." I took it, sniffed. "Awful." "I'm learning," she said. "Someone in the kitchen's teaching me to measure portions for renal diets. Everything's restricted, not just money, salt, sugar, fat." She gave a small laugh. "I think I'm learning from the stomach up." Laugh. "I think I'm learning from the stomach up. Even love is restricted," I said. "The wrong kind in the wrong place makes people heavy." I pointed at a chair. "Sit." She didn't. "Will you sign off on me as a long-term kitchen volunteer after my hours are up?" "I don't have that authority," I said. "Dr. Ava does." I lifted the cup. "But I'll say you show up." She nodded. Before she turned, she said, "I'm sorry." There are 100 ways to say sorry. Some are band-aids that peel off by noon. Some are welds. Need heat. Need time. I didn't answer. I watched her step down, one hand on her skirt so it wouldn't catch the storm grate. Cool air, wet grass, ordinary life. Dr. Ava and I finished the camera and audit playbook. Plain English. Which doors record, which don't. How long we retain. Who can view. When. The library transparency board sprouted a second panel. Spending on 3 new rehab beds, a portable ultrasound, sprinkler plumbing in the storage wing. Kids pointed. "Is this Mr. Rick's money?" The librarian said, "That's Mr. Rick's earnings." The kids giggled, not understanding all of it, enough to wonder. One morning, Caleb called me in. He slid a board decision across. After the 24-month transition, the custodian role becomes a volunteer oversight seat. A 3-person group will handle the valve, and I'll stay on as advisor. "You'll still have a key," he said, "but it's time to let them learn to turn it." I smiled. "Good," I said. "These fingers could use a rest." That night I stood in front of Rick's photo in the little nook I jokingly call the glass room, a pane I installed years ago to keep grease off the wall. I touched the frame and whispered. I kept my word. For a second, I swear I heard him half laugh. "Just snug it up, don't over-torque." The day Nate took his daughter home, I waved from the duplex steps. The little girl hugged a plush bear, round-cheeked, bright-eyed. Nate said, "Mr. Tom, when she's older, I'll tell her you're the man who kept the valve." I waved it off. "Just say I kept the door." He grinned. "Yes, sir." The car door thumped shut. The engine purred like a cat. Winter came slow. The Ohio went steel cold. Smoke roped up from chimneys. I made chicken soup with tiny pasta. On the other side of the wall, laughter. Another vet's family, 4 kids fighting over a TV remote. I packed an extra serving, labeled "Heat Me," set it on their step, knocked, and stepped back 3 paces. A woman with tired eyes opened the door. "Oh, bless you," she said. I nodded and turned. My back hurt less, not from bills, but from the rhythm of the walk. That night I sat at my old kitchen table and opened AITA. I typed slow, as plain as I could. Title: Wife tried to evict me right after the will reading. I used my pennies, the compliance roll, to appeal and stop it. AITA. I told what needed telling, left out what would humiliate. I wrote, "Those 7 figures aren't in anyone's pocket. They're in hospital beds, tubing, soup pots, laundry machines. They're restricted to keep lights on. I, a bad-back old man, got a plastic custodian card and a tiny stipend. Sounds like pocket change. It's really a key so no one turns the valve the wrong way." I listed the ruling: eviction denied, repayment, community labor, and no access without approval. "I'm not gloating," I wrote. "I'm hoping for understanding." I said Elaine now portions low-sodium meals and counts in PT. I mentioned Nate and the clamshell dinner. "Some folks call it soft," I wrote. "Some call it right. All I know is every time I flip a hall switch in the duplex, one more stretch of hallway is lit." I typed the last line. AITA for using the authority I was given to appeal and keep the fund on mission, even though it cost my wife face and access. I hit post and leaned back. The chair creaked. Cold air pressed a hint of snow throughout the door seam. The screen blinked with comments. One said, "NTA, endowments are restricted for a reason." Another, "ESH for not talking sooner, but at least she's learning." A gray-haired user named Ohio Granddad wrote, "My daughter once thought his money meant her money. They learn slow, but they learn." A vet, I think, wrote, "I slept in a half-house like that after rehab. I'm grateful for people who keep the door." I shut the laptop and stepped onto the porch. The river looked like gray silk. Streetlights poured down a dull gold. Somewhere in this small city, men like Rick are quiet, but their lights are still on. I patted my coat for the card, then stopped. I didn't need to touch it anymore. I went back in, turned off the stove, locked the door. The latch gave a small click, like a valve set just right.